somehow or the other, it seemed to hurt my lower back. So just, and maybe I overdid it. Just 3-4 days ago, I'd gone for a hike with my friends, did 14,000 steps. By the time I came home, I discovered that some close family death in Atlanta. So I ran there. And during that stress or whatever, I caused a lot of spasm in my body. So I have very difficult time right now. Mm-hmm. So it seems like I may have overdone it. Is that correct? Or is there something else?
I missed one word. Ordinate? What?
Yes, overdone.
Could be. Yes. When you hurt your, first of all, over 85% of the population, at least in the United States, I can't speak for other parts of the world because there are racial differences in how people's bodies react to things, especially in Asia. Osteoporosis is very different in Asia than it is in the United States, for instance. The pain in one's back many times is not diagnosed correctly, but it usually comes from a quick movement when your body is not ready for it. Namely, the muscles have not been relaxed enough to absorb the sudden shock. This is what I was meaning. Doing stretching and balancing prepares the body to take shock a little better. The other thing is, pain can be produced in a number of ways, but in my field, we usually talk about muscles, ligaments, and tendons. We're not into bone marrow cancer and things of that sort. We're just not equipped. We're not trained in that kind of medicine. So tendons, for instance, which are not very flexible, but when they get hurt, they take a long time to recover. And by getting hurt means that they're stressed apart quickly and beyond their normal short range of movement. There's lots of interesting tendons around your knees to keep your legs on straight. That's where typically people find a lot of problems. But the same thing is true around any bone alignment issues, and that's certainly true with the spine as well. So there are lots of things that traditionally goes on. If you go to a doctor, an osteopath, for instance, who specializes in bone issues, they might take an x-ray just to see if you've chipped anything or if there's a misalignment. Chiropractors do the same thing. Chiropractors might come to a conclusion that you're misaligned and they can knock a tendon, knock a vertebra slightly this way or that way and actually help people. People are sometimes skeptical of chiropractors, but some are very good and some have been known to help people do that. There's also physical therapy that people are routinely prescribed for back issues. It might help for a while, but it involves stretching, probing, pushing, hauling, but not much. They don't do much with diet in these areas. Now, that's the weak spot in the whole thing. Diet takes a long time to have an effect, either negatively or positively. I mean, just imagine how diet can affect your fingernails, for instance. It would take forever. Or your hair. That's why a lot of these medications that are sold to strengthen your fingernails, they might take a couple of months to have any noticeable effect. And in the meantime, you say they don't work. Well, sometimes they don't, sometimes they do. So I can't tell you, I can't prescribe to you what you should do for your back since I really don't know what the problem is. And even if I did, I might not be able to. But the obvious choice here is to pick your medication, Eastern or Western, or a blend of the two, and stick with it. But don't expect that. Be surprised if it works, because a lot of times you have to just learn to endure it. And that's not a nice thing to hear, but it sounds to me like you did something abrupt and that it is recoverable, that you haven't done anything that's permanent.
So Dr. Ron Miller, I must tell you that I'm lucky that my physician is believer in lifestyle medicine, Dr. Pankaj Vij, who is the co-founder of this thing. So I had a video visit with him. He arranged for everything. So he says, check out chiropractor.
Oh, I see. Yeah,
And
chiropractors.
and he's arranging for physical therapy.
Yeah.
So these are the two things. But unfortunately, neither he or I wanted to take some medicine, but it got so bad I couldn't even get up. So
Yeah.
they did give me for 5 days some
Pain
medicine,
Yeah,
cortisone, which I didn't want to take,
right.
but unfortunately I took.
Well, chiropractic and physical therapy, many times the two skills have the same office and they refer to each other. A good chiropractor gets probably more people with back problems than any other problem. Sometimes they can help, sometimes they can't, but it's worth a try.
So
Other
there's no
people have
harm in
tried.
it.
Other people have tried acupuncture. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It's one of those things, like I said, 5% of the population has back issues, and a high percentage of those are not diagnosed correctly because the symptoms are so masked by the complex of the spine that sometimes it just has to work its way out. But rest is the other prescription. And to be sure that if you sleep on your back, that you have a pillow behind your knees so that your lower back curvature is supported more in the bed. Another thing you can do is take a towel and roll it from the ends, a hand towel, and then put that towel behind your back with the rolls on either side of your spine when you're lying on your back, and lie on something hard. That's kind of a shiatsu effect. That's the Japanese technique for massage, but it's just one thing. It's supporting either side of the spine and has a tendency to help straighten it. So those are the only two things. And I'm really just giving you ideas. I'm not prescribing for your particular situation because I am not qualified to prescribe anything.
Thank you, Ron. That's pretty amazing. We understand on this platform that it's not for individual advice, and so everybody knows that part of it. There are wonderful questions already coming in for you. And the first question I see is, do you have any tips for osteoarthritis?
Be glad it's not rheumatoid arthritis.
Yeah.
Be glad it's not lupus. All of those are variations of arthritis. There's over 100 different kinds of arthritis if you really get into it.
Right.
Osteoarthritis is a mystery. A lot of people have it and they have to put up with it, and they get into the habit of taking painkillers to deal with it, but that doesn't solve the problem. It masks the problem. Right. Osteoarthritis is dealing with joints, usually in the hands and feet, but it can be elsewhere. It can be in the spine. Then it's really terrible. But I tend to think, first of all, there's no cure that I'm aware of, or boy, everybody would know what it is.
So maybe you can give generic tips in the terms of the arthritis, and you can combine it with the osteoporosis, because that's another question.
Okay. All osteo means bone, and anything, the itis means inflammation of, and porosis means depletion of mass in this case. Usually a loss of calcium, a loss of other minerals in the bone, and it means your predilection to break bones and to fall are increased when you have osteoporosis. Osteopenia is just before the measurement of osteoporosis. If you're tending toward osteoporosis, namely brittle bones, you have to be very, very careful, because what happens here is people fall and the first thing that breaks is either a wrist or a hip. And those are terrible. Anything that affects your ability to walk is one of the worst things that can happen to us as we get older, or any time, because that is how we get around. Once you cannot walk, you have to be dependent on other people. And that is something that is really scary, unless you live in a household of people that are just waiting to help you. And that's rare. And as far as arthritis is concerned, I have no cure, obviously. Heat tends to help. Aspirin helps some. NSAIDs help some. Some people are allergic to NSAIDs, so you have to get something stronger. You can only mask it. The other thing is that sometimes you get, so your joints lock, like a finger will be in this, it's called trigger finger. The best way around that is to just straighten it out. But it really means the cartilage, or those discs, like I mentioned before, has either gotten brittle or non-existent, and the bones lock in various positions. The typical treatment for that initially is cortisone, and eventually surgery. And what they do with surgery, they may insert a fake piece of cartilage. They can do that now, especially in knees. It works for a bit, but arthritis is chronic. As far as I know, there is no cure, unfortunately. It's a royal pain. That's the best I can say. But if you exercise and move, if you do stretching and keep the joints mobile, it tends to produce fluid. It tends to draw fluid to the joint and prevent the severity and prevent the rapidity of arthritis's bad development.
You can steer it to give us some takeaway tips for an individual who is gracefully aging and may have minor issues of aches, pains, and how can they do self-assessment for themselves, and maybe how can they integrate and mainly sustain their activity?
Well, one is to follow an assessment regimen like I described, but I didn't have a list to give you, or there are descriptions. And if you do that today, and if you do it, and if you exercise in the interim and do it 3, 4, 5, 6 months from now and see whether it's improved or not. Generally speaking, though, we kind of know just by walking upstairs. Gee, I used to be able to go up 2 at a time. Now I can't. That was a while ago. But just if you live in a house, if you're fortunate enough to live in a house with stairs, because that means you have to exercise whether you like it or not. I'm fortunate enough to just try to go from the top to the bottom, time how long it takes you. Then give yourself an interim, and then see how fast you can. I'm assuming you have no cardio problems. You haven't had atrial fibrillation or a heart attack or stroke or anything. See how fast you can go up. Write that down somewhere on the wall or on a piece of paper, and then see a month from now whether there's a difference. If you haven't done anything, if you just sat on your butt for a month, guaranteed you can't do it better. It would take you a longer time. But if you move around, if you walk up and down stairs, my brother, who was 102, would conscientiously walk up and down stairs 6 times every day. And he was amazing. I mean, he had quadruple bypass, but that wasn't because he couldn't walk. It was because his heart was clogged. So, but nevertheless, that's little games you can play with yourself to prove to yourself you're either getting better or worse. And if you have the guts to take some form of positive action to overcome it. But it's hard because our natural predilection is not to do it.
Right. Means we promote the idea that motion is new lotion.
Yes, that's exactly right. So,
So
very
keep
good.
moving. Yeah. So now, will you show some maybe self-assessment tricks for people, like maybe 2-3 ideas to take, like practical tips they can do on their own at home, just like,
Well, I'll give you 3 things to do.
yeah.
I mentioned them already. Most important one, cross your arms, sit in a chair. Don't let your back touch the chair. No arms on the chair. Stand up all the way and sit down. See how many you can do in 30 seconds. Write it down. That is the best example of how well your legs are doing.
Right.
The next one is the stretch. And I'm going to try to see if I can get the camera. Put one leg out straight, with both hands, one on top of the other, and reach down, keeping your leg straight to see how close to your toe you can get.
Mhm.
I don't know whether you can see that. Yeah, I guess you can get the idea. You don't have to do it on both sides. Just pick the leg you want to do and be sure you cross your hand, one on top of the other, and one hand isn't further away than the other. Make an estimate as to how close you are to your toe. If you can
Right.
touch your toe, it's a 0. If you can go past your toe an inch, it's a 1. If you
Mhm.
can't make it to your toe an inch, it's a -1. So you
Right.
can do this little code trick to give you an idea of how your lower body flexibility is doing. The other one is, I already showed you, it's trying to find something that's 5 pounds. Incidentally,
Like
I recommend a weight like this. This is a flexible weight, and it's called an ankle weight because it's usually wrapped around your foot. But you can put it together and wrap it around your hand and use it just as easily. So it works both ways. These are for the exercise part that I was just describing. This thing has pockets in it. And in each pocket is a piece of steel. And each piece of steel weighs a certain amount. So you can get up to 5 pounds or 1 pound variation on these things. They're called ankle weights. And they wrap around your ankle. That's what they're designed for. So you can use those to exercise. Exercise is what you do after you take the assessment. So for a woman, 3 pounds. How fast you can do it in 30 seconds. This, I think, is probably now, this is probably 2 pounds now. So you go as fast as you can for 5 seconds and count how many times you do it. For a man, it should be 5 pounds. The testers at California State University, Fullerton, determined that the muscle mass generally in men is larger than the muscle mass in women. So they tried to counter the difference by having different resistances as part of the test. This is a measure of your upper body strength. There are lots of things associated with upper body strength, but that is a symptom. What's happening here is the bicep muscle is contracting. But there are tons of other muscles in the shoulders, the neck, lower back, outside of your arm. But this is one you can't do all. You can't assess all of them. You can't lift 10-pound weight with your finger and then another finger. Why waste all that time when you can just get it with one symptom? So those 3 things, there are others, of course, but those 3 things would get you on the road.
excellent. And how many rounds you recommend to do the?
Pardon me?
How many rounds one should do? So when
For
you
the
do
test?
with the weight in the palms.
Well, I was doing the assessment. I wasn't
Yeah.
doing exercise. Exercises are different. Exercise, first of all, you do both hands at
No,
once.
but
probably.
for the assessment, is there any specific number or criteria to look at?
Oh, to find out whether you're normal
Yeah.
or not?
Yeah,
There are, CSU Fullerton has determined there's a range for each age group. The problem is that the CSU Fullerton people no longer offer this test. I've got their book, but they won't do any analysis of the data or anything like that. So
oh,
in
no.
effect, when I left the Y, they quit doing it. I don't think there was a correlation, but the two things happened at once. I apologize for that, but I was speaking of longitudinal, namely comparing yourself with yourself in the future, rather
Right.
than comparing yourself with everybody else in the United States that is in the sample group. You can live without that, but you can't live without comparing your own. Your own progress or lack thereof. That's far more important information than knowing whether you're better or worse than 40% of the population. I don't think that matters much.
That's wonderful. So thank you very much, Ron.